Dr. Leeson, thanks for joining us. Now, it's a big question, but how long are we all going to live?
A lot longer than we think. And of course, it depends not only which country we live in, but where in that country. It depends on a lot of other lifestyle factors, socioeconomic factors.
And for today's 25 or 30-year-olds, how long can they expect to live?
So at the population level for those aged 25, in this country, in the UK, we're probably looking at something between 75 and 80 years of life left.
Wow.
Which will take them beyond 100.
And what is it that's enabling us to live so much longer?
It's a lot to do, because we are talking at population level. There are big differences among groups. But at the population level, it's down to, despite everything we hear, healthier lifestyles. But a lot is to do with medical science, developments in treatments, in preventions, and new technologies which are enabling us really to push back death.
And is that extra longevity of life inevitable? How does it develop from here? And is there anything that's likely to put a brake on it?
I think it's fair to say that the world of both gerontology, which is the science of aging, and also demography, which is the science of population, I think there are divided opinions on that. But certainly the evidence that we have from the past is that there's no reason to believe, at the moment at least, that there is any sign of a limit.
And how are we going to pay for all this, and what will retirement look like in the future?
Imagine a world where the cohorts being born today, imagine the world that they will get old in. That's going to be a world of old people. And growing old in a world full of old people is very different from growing old in a world full of young people. And it does, with life expectancies of 100 or even more than that, it does mean that everything will change. That life extension that we're seeing is not years in frailty, inactive years. It will be quite ridiculous if we foresee a future where we're expecting to retire at the age of 65, when at the age of 65 people can expect to live for another 35, 40 or even more years towards the end of this century.
What does that mean for working lives and different stages of career?
And if we think of these radically extended lives that we can expect, we have to think of our whole life course. And at the moment, and has been for some time, our life course, it's divided, we sort of roughly, we educate ourselves for a third of our lives, we work for a third of our lives, or at least that's what we thought, and then we're retired for a third, roughly speaking, nowadays. And clearly, if that life becomes 100, 110, 120 years, then I think we've got to think of the whole life course very differently. Not just our careers, but also our education. You know, if we seriously think that we can spend 25 years, and in those 25 years we learn everything we need to know for the next 80 years, then I think we do need to think again. And yes, I think workplaces will become very different, and the way our careers develop will become very different. We're even beginning to see the beginnings of this now, where people in certain types of occupation at least retire from that occupation, from that career, and begin a new career quite late in life. It's called people, and also we're seeing people unretiring themselves. So even people who've gone into retirement actually unretiring themselves and coming back into the workforce.
What extra strain does this put on government finances?
I think we're moving increasingly towards, not in the immediate future, but we will in the longer term, move towards certainly state finance pensions, which at best will keep you out of poverty. Anything beyond that, I think increasingly we'll see, will have to be the responsibility of the individual.
For young people today, what does it do to their working lives and their careers?
It's this question of trying to envisage how one's life course is going to unfold, and especially when that life is going to be significantly longer At the Institute of Population Ageing at the University of Oxford, where I work, we run something called the Global Ageing Survey, which has been carried out more than 20 countries around the world, over 80,000 people interviewed over a number of years. These are people just pre and post-retirement. And what is interesting is that wherever we look in the world, there is a keenness among these generations, both those approaching retirement, but also those who've just entered retirement, to continue to make a contribution. And I think we just then have to stop and think, what do we mean by that, making a contribution? And maybe we need to rethink how we define a contribution, that does not necessarily have to be for financial rewards in a traditional workplace. We already know that a lot of people are doing voluntary work. A lot of people are doing a lot of work in the family without grandparents, for example. Where would a lot of parents be today with childcare? Clearly, with the model that we have currently, doing that sort of work, making that sort of contribution doesn't feed into your pension pot. But maybe we need to rethink that in some way so that that sort of contribution would also be rewarded by feeding into a pension pot.
And what you've described might be okay for those with less active jobs, but what if your job is physically demanding?
This is the greatest success story of humankind, that so many of us are living such long and healthy lives. But obviously there are certain differences between certain groups of people within our population. And some people do have physically demanding jobs. We need those jobs to be done. We need people to do them. They are physically demanding. And maybe, therefore, we need to look at a different way of enabling people with physically demanding jobs to exit that job a lot earlier than they would otherwise have been able to do it with the current situation of having to work to a certain age. None of the things we're talking about here, per definition, are a problem. They become problems because the infrastructures that we've put in place for a young population are no longer fit for purpose in terms of an old population. And that's where we have to make the switch.